Okay.
All
So
right.
welcome everybody. I'm Claire Baker. I'm Senior Director of Communications at Beyond Celiac. I'm not Senior Director of Zoom operations. So that's, we're all in this together, right? That's Beyond Celiac tagline, together for a cure, together to solve the Zoom platform fun. I'm here today with the wonderful guests, Beckee Moreland. We know her better as Beckee.
Hello.
She's been a part of the Beyond Celiac world for more than a decade. Was the director of our Great Kitchens program. She's a food service industry consultant in the gluten-free space. She is certified in culinary nutrition. She and her husband are restaurateurs, and so she's got her hand, and I won't tell her story, but she has celiac disease, so she knows many things. And happy to introduce Julie Kennedy, who I also met, I think maybe my first week at Beyond Celiac, I was introduced to Julie. She's been a longtime volunteer with us, also a person with celiac disease, and her daughter has celiac disease, and she's been on our patient family advisory council. She has attended both our research summits, and in the time we've known her, she's become a registered dietitian. And so I think I've probably covered all your business, but I would love for you to introduce yourselves. And as you talk a little bit, when we prepared for this, we thought it'd be fun to see if you have a food philosophy. Introduce yourself, tell us your food philosophy if you have one, and then we can get rolling. Julie, how about you?
Okay. All right. So thank you for that introduction. So Beyond Celiac was one of the very first places that I went when I was diagnosed. I'm a research learner. I like to learn things, and I just hit the internet right away. I did not know what celiac disease meant. And I found Beyond Celiac to be reliable. They were in FCA at the time. And I felt like it was a place where I could get quality information. And so I was diagnosed about 8 years ago. With my diagnosis, I had all three of my children tested, and my oldest daughter got the lucky straw, and she has celiac disease. She was diagnosed at 8. She's 15 now. And as a result of our diagnosis, I felt I was a middle school teacher at the time, middle school math teacher, which I loved doing. But I felt like a passion to help other people. I felt like our diagnosis was a lot of like us figuring things out and feeling kind of lost and confused. And I said, this has got to be better. There's got to be people that can help. And I said, well, why don't I do that? And so I went back to school. I went to UNC Chapel Hill and got a master's of public health with registered dietitian training, and graduated. It took about 2.5, well, actually my prerequisite courses, it took about 4 years total. Graduated and started a business called Julie Kennedy Nutrition. I partnered with a local GI clinic in Cary, North Carolina, and Raleigh, the Raleigh area, and help people with new celiac disease diagnoses. And I get to share, our personal story with people if they're interested, but also I get to empathize with them and know where they're coming from. So I meet with people virtually. I also help people with IBS, managing IBS through nutrition, IBD, and SIBO, which seems to be all over the place these days. But I love what I do, very passionate about it. And I love Beyond Celiac and appreciate everything that you guys do. So I'm very happy to be here.
Thanks, Julie. Beckee.
Well, when I was diagnosed, which was a long time ago, 29 years ago, so Beyond Celiac wasn't even a wish at that. I guess it was close to. I mean, I think Alice was thinking about it at about
2003. Yeah, 2003 was the founding.
Yeah, so that was 1992 when I was diagnosed, which was back when there were very few products even that you could even buy in the United States. So I started from scratch, and I have continued to be a scratch cooker, and that's something that I think has really helped me to become healthier. But I do credit my mother for teaching me how to cook at a very young age. And she grew up on a farm and learned how to cook, with using what she had. So that was a gift that she gave me. And I think for anyone with celiac disease, cooking is definitely a life skill, but it's also a survival skill. So I think that's really, really important. But my food philosophy, and I will tell you a little bit about that. So my food philosophy is to eat outside the box. And to me, what that means is inside my box are the things that are my restrictions or things that I have to keep out of my diet, for health reasons or for things that don't agree with me. So for example, obviously gluten, because I have celiac disease. And also I was one of the first sibling that was diagnosed. I have 2 other sisters who have also been diagnosed with celiac disease since my diagnosis. So we do have it in our family as well. So gluten, dairy, I limit to just to no cow dairy, no soy, no oats, and low sugar. But that does seem like it's pretty restricted, but to me, that's in the box. And what's outside the box is where the creativity and the adventurous eating begins. And I think that sometimes if we focus too much on what we can't have, it limits our availability to really be creative and to eat things that maybe we're not used to trying, or new ways of cooking, or ethnic foods, things like that maybe we haven't tried yet. But the other thing that's inside my box is literally foods that are ultra processed. So I try to eat foods that aren't even in a box, that don't come in a box in the grocery store. And so
I see what you did there.
So yeah, always trying to put a little twist to it. So anyway, so things that you don't purchase in a box. And I found that for me, and I'm a very good label reader, I have to admit, I could probably, be in a contest to read labels, but I think that not reading or reading labels, but not having the worry of trying to decipher labels and decipher ingredients has really been freeing to me. It's been very freeing to just not have to worry about it. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm good. I do worry about it. I'm very strict with my gluten. But if you focus on whole foods, you have less of the ingredients to look at.
So of the items in the box that are ones that you don't eat, besides gluten, are there any that are like a medical restriction versus choices you're making for
mostly intolerances? So soy is an intolerance, the dairy. I can get by with some goat and sheep cheeses and milk. So okay. I do use those. But the others, the low sugar I found just recently has helped me with my energy level. I have more energy and I have less aches and pains, to be honest. So that's been a real eye-opener to me.
Well, and I think it's interesting that in our day and age, it's, I'm a person with celiac disease. I was undiagnosed for probably 25 years. I had anemia, and I was one of those people that, because my primary symptoms weren't GI, when I finally got diagnosed because of anemia and went gluten-free, I felt so much better. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know I didn't feel fine. And I hadn't really connected diet to how I felt. It's like, am I full or am I not? Do. And so wow, I can't believe how much better I feel when I didn't realize I was, I thought that was normal. And I think it was kind of an eye opener in terms of how divorced we can be from the connection of what we eat and how we feel, especially in the land of processed foods and food marketing and all of the kind of sensory onslaught we get for what we are being enticed to buy and consume.
Mm-hmm.
We've got so in our preparation for today's webinar, we collected questions from our community and we thought some up ourselves. And so I just want to jump in with some, and we'll see where the conversation goes. But I see that we have quite a few people on the webinar live, and I can read your chat. So if a question comes up that's related to health and nutrition as it relates to celiac disease or other, type it in the chat. If it's a little too far afield, we'll do our best. If it's right on the, if it's, you know, part of the conversation, I'll be sure and include it. But want our community to feel included as well. And Christine gave Julie a shout out too. Julie, I don't know if you can see the chats, but
I haven't looked.
Christine in Alabama says that you were a tremendous help to her when she was diagnosed in May. You saved her. So right there,
thank you. That's so good to hear. Thank you.
And right away, Chase asked a question about diagnosis using blood tests, and that is a little off topic for what we're talking about today, but my able colleague, Maria, will likely be able to help with links in the chat to assist. Acacia asks, what advice can you provide for the best things to eat when newly diagnosed and to help heal? Would you guys, we're kind of going off script, but would you guys be open to discussing what's best for someone newly diagnosed and getting on the way to healing?
Yeah,
Yes.
Go ahead, Julie, you start.
So we talked about this in our pre-meeting, and so when I was first diagnosed, I did it the wrong way. And I tried to one-for-one substitute everything that we had before. And I felt like I was making it more complicated than it needed to be. I was finding these elaborate recipes with all these things that I thought that I needed. And what I realized, and I think it took a couple weeks, I was talking to one of my neighbor friends, and I was just like, I am so exhausted trying to like make all of these gluten-free meals and these gluten-free snacks. And what I realized in that conversation let's just go simple. Like, let's stick with things that are naturally gluten-free, like chicken and rice and broccoli. And it was like this, like a sense of freedom. And honestly, that is the way that we should all be eating, is eating whole natural foods. So when I just sort of took a step back, and because when you go through the diagnosis process, you do go through lots of different emotions. You go through the denial and the anger and the sadness and the, why did this happen to me? And, you know, how am I going to do this? And you go to the grocery store and it takes hours because you realize that there's wheat and soy sauce. And once you sort of step back and you think about what are the things that are from this earth or from this naturally occurring that I enjoy, it opens everything up. And those things are good. Like, they taste, I love vegetables and I love potatoes and rice and, you know, chicken and steak and, you know, these meals that I have always loved. And I think that's another key, is you don't have to change everything. You can find those meals that you grew up with that you always enjoyed and go kind of back to your roots and simplify things. And that sort of took the stress away. And that went for snacks as well. Like, you know, carrots are gluten-free, tortilla chips are gluten-free. You know, we can have these simple things that, you know, take the stress away from trying to replace that one for one, because not only was it hard to do, but it was disappointing. I mean, bottom line, gluten-free bread does not taste like regular bread. You know, as much as we, you know, are happy with the bread options that we have and we're like, yay, it's not the same. And so when you try to replace those one for one processed foods, it is a lot of disappointment. So you just sort of step back and say, what are the naturally gluten-free foods that I enjoy, and just dive in with those.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I would give it at least a month to do that. I mean, to start. Just to, be kind to yourself. It's a lot to digest at first. The emotions alone and the life changes that you feel, or lifestyle changes that you feel are happening. Be kind to yourself and just know that it's going to be a process. It's not going to happen overnight. You're going to make mistakes.
Mhm.
We all do. We all make mistakes. I can remember, this was, of course, people will gasp at this, but, eating, Rice Krispies with malt in them. But I think that at the time, malt was really not something in the forefront. I mean, everyone was looking for wheat. And also, when I was diagnosed, cross contact really wasn't a thing. I mean, it wasn't even something that was addressed. So, just keep it simple. Try to eat at home as much as you can, so that you know what's in your food and how it's prepared. And you mentioned the natural foods. I think that's I think that's going to be hopefully the takeaway from this entire webinar. But things like applesauce. I mean, that is such a simple, pure, good tummy feeling ingredient. I mean, it's so good for you, and it's you can get the ones with no sugar, or you can make your own, which I do all the time. And it's very simple. It's just apples, a little water, some spices, and lemon juice, and blend it up, and it's delicious. So you can do that yourself. And soups, you can make your own bone broth, or you can buy bone broth, anything that you feel that is really going to have a lot of nutrients and vitamins in it. Because remember, as we all know, with celiac disease, food is our medicine. And if the medicine that you're using to put in your body is not full of, vitamins and nutrients, then you're missing an opportunity.
I think, so you guys have brought up a number of things that made me go, oh, right. When I got diagnosed, I remember maybe the first or second week after diagnosis, and I was still trying to figure it out, and we used to love going out to eat, and we went to a restaurant that had on their menu gluten-free options, but we tried to go on a Saturday when it was busy, and I just didn't feel safe. I'm not a burst into tears kind of person, but I burst into tears and I made us leave. I'm like, I can't do this. This is so hard.
Same thing.
And it was so hard. And, and I was still very much in the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, denial, anger, bargaining, phase of it. And it does get better, but it was tough. The other thing it reminded me of, and this is one of the questions that was one of the ones we talked about in advance. So I mentioned I had iron deficiency anemia because of the damage to my small intestine. What are some nutrients that people in our community might need to be aware of, either right after diagnosis or even further down the line?
So at diagnosis, one of the main issues would be absorption. So that would be where we look at iron, vitamin D, calcium. As time progresses, then your intestine will begin to heal, and then absorption will happen naturally, and those nutrients should normalize. I think it's important though, and I think that this gets lost sometimes, is to follow up annually after diagnosis with vitamin and mineral testing. The best way to determine if there is a vitamin or mineral deficiency is by blood test. A lot of people ask me all the time, well, how do I know if I'm deficient in B12 or vitamin D or calcium? You need to go and get a blood test done. And then they ask, should I take a supplement? In the beginning, I would probably recommend a multivitamin, but as time goes on, if there's no deficiency there, then a supplement is just going to add on top of it, and it will be excreted through your urine. So it's not helpful unless there is a deficiency. So you want to make sure you get those follow-up tests done. You want to get your antibodies tested as well as your vitamins and minerals tested, and have that annual checkup with your either GI doctor or your general practitioner. One nutrient that many Americans in all diets do not get enough of is fiber. So in the gluten-free diet, we take out gluten-containing grains. So it is sort of like you have to be intentional on the gluten-free diet to get whole grains. So just to give a little, what's the point of whole grains? Little talk. So the difference between a whole grain and a refined grain is that a whole grain has all three parts. It has the endosperm, the bran, and the germ. In a refined grain, they shave off the bran and they take out the germ. So all that you're left with is the endosperm. Well, in that bran and germ and the whole grain is fiber, B vitamins, minerals that are crucial for metabolism. So when we choose a whole grain gluten-free product or a whole grain gluten-free bread or pasta, then we are getting access to these vitamins and minerals that we would miss out on if we went down the refined grain route. There are pastas in the gluten-free options. Jovial pasta is one. There's a quinoa pasta. That would be a whole grain pasta. There are whole grain breads that offer this opportunity for vitamins and minerals that are a concern when you take out gluten out of your diet. Other places to get fiber are beans, nuts, chia seeds, raspberries are a fantastic fiber source. Vegetables, you want to leave the skin on. You want to have at least 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. So thinking about a Mediterranean style of eating, you can apply that to the gluten-free diet. The grain you would choose would be a gluten-free grain. So Beckee, you probably know more about cooking with gluten-free grains. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Sure. I'd love to. Well, one of the obviously the easiest ones to use, or the ones that people are most familiar with, would be rice. Mm-hmm. Brown rice, there's a long and a short grain. I like the short better personally, and I don't know most people use that, but for me it's got a little more chew to it. And there's not just brown rice. There's red rice and black rice and wild rice, and so there's all different kinds of rices that you can use. Part of my creativity is to try to eat colorful foods. Mm-hmm. And so, eating the rainbow is a big deal, and you can even eat the rainbow in your rice. So that's a fun thing to do. I also cook quinoa, and with quinoa, it's important to make sure that you cook it through and not just have it as the seed, because that endosperm that Julie talked about needs to pop out. So you need to see that little curlicue come out of the quinoa. And another thing to give it a little more flavor is to toast it first. So to put it in your pan dry, of course, you want to rinse it to get is it safranin? Is that what it's called?
It's bitter taste.
It's like a soapy, it's actually I think it's just a natural thing that quinoa has on it to keep the birds away. It's like a pesticide, natural pesticide, isn't it? But you want to wash that off or buy products that have it already pre-washed. Mm-hmm. But I like to toast the quinoa seeds and get them to the point where they're kind of nutty, and then add your liquid, whether it be a broth or vegetable stock or something. But yeah, those are great. I also like to cook with sorghum, and I know some people don't use sorghum a lot, but it is it just adds a little more variety to the grains that you can use. I have to
jump in with sorghum. So I'm from Oklahoma, and Becky's from Nebraska, and when we were growing up, sorghum is feed.
Yeah. That's right.
Food. But Beckee and I did a webinar a few years ago about the joys of sorghum. And so I got some, and you can pop it like popcorn. It's teeny tiny little kernels, but it's got some amusement value there too. If you do a project with your young kids, it can be, everybody knows what popcorn is, but can you imagine the teeny tiny little ones? And then it's I wouldn't have patience to do that very often, but it's fun to know that you can do that. But
Well, and I don't know if we have any manufacturers on the call today, but if we do, here's a shout out. If you could please make more sorghum flakes and sorghum crisps, that would make me a very happy girl, because they're hard to find, especially the crisps, because they're more like an oat. And I am one of those 3 to 5% of celiac people that cannot have gluten-free oats. In any form, I do react to them. And the sorghum flake crisp acts just like an oat. So you can make like similar to, like, you could use it for, cookies and granola and, all of those things that you love. So I'd love to see more of those, because sorghum is a big one. Now I do kind of try to stay away from millet a little bit, because it's hard to find millet that doesn't have cross contact for me. All of the grains that I use are always certified. I won't choose grains that are not certified at all. And that goes for cornmeal. It goes for any type of whole grains. So I could go on for hours about it, so I know you want to move on.
No. I was just going to point out, when you mentioned oats, and some people with celiac disease can't have oats because they react to them like they would wheat, rye, or barley. But oats are also one of those grains. It's a whole grain, how awesome, but also highly cross-contaminated, comes into contact with gluten-containing grains in the growing and shipping and production. So certified gluten-free oats is there. There's not a uniform guidance in the United States about how a person with celiac disease should deal with oats. But it's Beyond Celiac has typically leaned toward, once you get diagnosed, don't eat them for a while and work with your doctor on that. And then if you want to try them, introduce them, but pay attention to how you're feeling.
And also, Julie, you can speak to this regarding the quantity of oats that you eat. I think that's important, that people don't understand that there is a limit of the amount of oats that you should be eating a day. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, it depends on what you're eating the rest of the day.
Right.
So we want to look at 48 grams of whole grains in a day. So that's not like 48 grams of carbs, it's 40. And when you look on a product to see if it is a whole grain or not, it will tell you how many grams of whole grain are in a serving. I think something that is hard to like wrap our head around is what a serving size is. So when you look on that nutrition facts label, the very top, it will tell you what the serving size is. And when you look down and you look for either fiber, or you're looking, whole grain is actually going to be labeled on a label on the front. If you actually, and I'm not saying measure your food, but if you poured out every meal for the rest of your life, if you just measured out a half a cup and figured out what that looks like, a lot of us would probably be surprised. If you want to use, just your hand, if this is about a cup the size of your fist, so that's where you would be able to convert what it is on the label to what it is on your plate. But you need about 48 grams of whole grains in a day. In terms of a grain serving in a breakfast, a lunch, and a dinner, you want the grain to be 1/4 of your plate. And you want half of your plate to be colorful vegetables or fruit. And, it's a nice visual to look at and see, like, I'm looking down at my plate. Is half of what I'm eating colorful? Is it a vegetable? Is it a fruit? So you want half of it to be that, and then 1/4 to be a grain, and preferably half of your grains to be whole grains, and then 1/4 to be lean protein. And that would be, and of course, mix in some healthy fats and dairy if you can tolerate it. But that is what we should aim for at breakfast and at lunch and at dinner. We recently went to an Italian restaurant that had a great gluten-free options. It was lovely, but I was looking at these plates that were coming out, and it was like grain, like 100% grain and some cream sauce on top. And bread on the side. And I was like, wow, that is not what the plate. So I was asking, could I make half of what I order vegetables? So I asked for steamed vegetables and then some pasta mixed in and then some salmon, because I was trying to, make my plate something that would make me feel good afterwards. And, it's not, again, that's not something that naturally happens. It's something that you have to really pay attention to. But as you start to eat in that way, you notice how those vegetables and fruits and whole grains and lean proteins make you feel and your physical response to that. And that is like a positive feedback where it encourages you to eat. You want your plate to look like that. You will innately want that to happen because you feel so good afterwards.
And, on the whole grains, for example, like rice, I know sometimes rice can be a little dull looking on the plate, but there's also things you can add to it. For example, you could add nuts to your rice. You can I like to add sun-dried tomatoes, just chopped up, and that kind of gives it some color and flavor. Or dried fruit, or, there are all different kinds of things you can add to those whole grains to spruce them up a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'm just taking a peek at the chat. We're getting some questions, and we already had some planned also about kids and celiac disease and teens and celiac disease. And so, and I know part of the answer is, well, it depends on when they were diagnosed. But if you have a child that's diagnosed super early and all they ever know is gluten-free, then they don't have that comparison. But if you have a child that's diagnosed after they already have their favorite foods established, or a teenager trying to, go out, what are some, I know that's kind of a broad spectrum, but what are some thoughts about how to accommodate your kid? I'm a mom, my kids don't have celiac disease, but I know I don't like them to be distressed, and food is a way to, our society's gotten to, oh, don't feel bad, eat the fill and have some ice cream, have whatever. So Julie, as a mom of a daughter with celiac disease, and Beckee as a person who's lived in the world in a while, I won't say a long time.
It's okay, Claire. I got it.
We're about the same age, so that's what advice do you have for parents of kids and part B, parents of teenagers in managing celiac disease and their social lives or their personal tastes?
I think for us, my daughter was diagnosed at 8 and she's 15, and to come to terms with the fact that some things are going to be hard. I mean, there are just, we've had soccer games where there was a surprise cupcake that somebody brought for birthdays and she just couldn't have it. And that's okay. Yes, it's sad. And yes, you are upset about it, but we'll have something on the way home, or we'll have something when we get home. So it is, those life lessons that, not every kid has to understand, but it does make them stronger and it does build character. But in terms of helping them adjust to the people around them when other people are eating, one, I would make sure that you are prepared, you have snacks available. One of the hardest things is when your child is hungry and then there's nothing to eat, and then you can't find anything to eat. And that whole planning ahead part will really pay off. You can provide snacks that are naturally gluten-free. When we go to someone's house and there's a bunch of families that are together and a bunch of kids, and they're like, I'll bring this, I'll bring that, I'll bring this. I'll say, I'll bring ice cream Sundays for afterwards, because all the kids can have ice cream Sundays. And if there's a dairy intolerance, then we bring a dairy-free or lactose-free ice cream. But that seems to be something, or fruit, you can put fruit on. Not every kid wants fruit for dessert, but anyway, there's another way to get half of your fruit and veggies in. But having those naturally gluten-free snacks. And again, that is the more nutritious route anyway. So carrots and hummus, grapes and cheese. Celery is kind of not everybody loves it, but if you dip it in some cream cheese, it's really good. So
and it's got great fiber, right?
There you go. So having those naturally gluten-free snacks prepared and available. One of the things I've noticed in my home is if I buy fruits and vegetables and put them in the refrigerator, these children of mine, these teenagers, They are not going to go and wash and cut and get all of these snacks available. But if I wash them and cut them and lay them out on the island, they'll go to town. And if it's that extra step of preparing ahead. And now this doesn't happen all the time, but when I do that, I have noticed they will eat them. When we're out and I've brought apples and peanut butter, they will go to town on apples and peanut butter. But if I hadn't planned ahead, where are we going to stop? Convenience store. We can get some Cheetos, I guess, so it is beneficial to think ahead, but also knowing that, there are going to be disappointments along the way, but I believe that that's what makes us stronger.
Yeah,
Beckee, what do you think?
This is America, and there's always going to be another meal or snack coming down.
Yes, there
down
will
the way.
be.
And convenience stores have actually gotten a little easier, at least from an adult point of view, of like hard-boiled eggs and that kind of thing are there.
Yeah.
But that's, if you're a kid and like everybody else is getting a treat, your mom tries to hand you a hard-boiled egg. You're like,
Yeah, I don't know how that goes.
It's not going to cut it. Although
Yeah.
they do come in handy. I remember one time I was in an airport, I was traveling and I was starving. I couldn't find anything to eat. And I found hard-boiled eggs, a packet of mustard and mayonnaise and relish, and I made egg salad.
Wow, that was smart.
I was like, oh my gosh, I can make egg salad. And I
What a
had
great
crackers
idea.
with me and I was ready. It was just delightful. I thought I was so pleased with myself. So you never know,
I know.
those little packets of things you can find, those condiments.
Yes.
But also when I travel and when I'm in the car, and I think this is a great tip for kids too, I'm sure you can get them in all designs and things with things on them, but mostly we equate them to holidays where you have the little tins. So if you fill those with nuts and seeds and dried fruit and gluten-free pretzels, you can keep those in your car and they're there, and all you have to do is just keep that full and you've got at least a snack that they can have. And I do travel with them because it keeps it fresh, and I put crackers and things like in that too. And you always have things with you because you can usually find some nut butter or peanut butter, or you can find some cheese or something, but you have that all ready to go. So that's to me one of the things that's kind of a little saver. And making your own power bars. We used to call them power bars before even the whole big granola bar scene happened. And those are actually pretty easy to find in the store, and there are healthier ones. There are some that are, full of a lot of sugar and a lot of stabilizers and things, but there are those that, they've done a good job with those, and there are some healthier choices in the granola bars. And those little apple squeezy pouches for little kids. I mean, those are a great, just fruit source. And the fruit leathers, those are kind of fun too.
I think the biggest thing for us, and just I think in general healthy eating, is to try to avoid that ravenous hunger. Because when we get to that place of hangry, we lose our ability to think rationally.
And you end up making bad choices.
No idea what you're talking about.
You're gonna take risks too.
Right. Exactly. You'll be like, I don't care,
that's when you start taking risks, and that's what gets you in trouble.
Right. And children are the same way. And if we can help understand, their pattern of eating as well, and say, when you start to feel hungry, reach for these nuts and seeds, and here they are available. And because if kids go too long, they get cranky too. And so planning ahead, I feel like I keep saying this, but that is the key, is to making sure that there is food available. It's gluten-free, it's safe, because not only do you get hungry and cranky, you also, you get mad. I have gotten mad before of I'm so hungry that if I can't find something right now, I'm going to lose it, So that planning ahead part is so crucial.
Yeah. And part of that planning ahead that you talked about with having the, the vegetables all ready to go for, dips and things, if you take that extra step when you get home from the grocery store and actually take the things out of the plastic and dunk them in, a tub of cold water with some vinegar and soda water, or baking soda, and just soak them and clean them and get them prepped and ready. Not only are you going to have snacks, but you're also going to have all of your veggies ready for stir fries.
Yeah.
And all of your veggies ready to stick in with a roast, or to add to whatever you're cooking that week. And that's going to also increase those whole foods, and also, it'll make your life easier when it comes to meal planning.
And you had mentioned this the other day, Beckee, about how I think one of the top concerns for people is that when I buy fruits and vegetables, they go bad so quickly. So Can you talk about what you had said the other day about freezing everything?
Yeah, sure. So I've personally been trying to, and I think this might have what you're talking about. I'm trying to be less wasteful, and to try to utilize all of my vegetable pieces in one way or another, whether it be to compost them or to take things that are on edge and put them in a bag so that I can use them for broth, and that kind of leads into doing more of the processing in your kitchen rather than having somebody process it before it gets to your kitchen. So, if you've got your fruits and vegetables, those broccoli stems, you can make those into zoodles or noodles, or chop them up and, put them in a stir fry and take the outer peel off of them. So there are things that you can do, all of the peels from your vegetables will go into a stock. Or you can actually take those and then reduce them down. I know this takes a little time, but you can reduce those down, and you've got a concentrated flavor source that you can then add to things. Or if you've got extra, carrots, and, I'm growing tomatoes right now, and I have a huge abundance of those. And so tonight I'm just going to take as many of my Romas and fill a big roaster and add garlic and olive oil and herbs and spices and, make a sauce. And that's just an easy thing to do. And then freeze half of it. So, when you make soup, make what you're going to eat for the week, and then freeze part of it so that you have it ready to go.
And that turns into a time saver. We have a comment that's that, with time spent shopping and cooking, just not having the energy to do one more thing. And so, and for me, I got a lot of stuff going on, and I found that I don't always make the best, or I always eat gluten-free, at least except when I get glutened, but as much as it's in my control, I eat gluten-free. And sometimes in the evening, I'm just pooped out. So what I did was make myself a list of things I could make in 10 minutes or less, or at least assemble in 10 minutes or less. And I wrote them down and I taped it to the inside of my kitchen cabinet. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm so hungry. And I don't have any, oh, look, I can make tortilla soup, which is essentially get a can opener and the beans and the tomatoes from my pantry, which isn't necessarily the same as go get fresh vegetables and do something with them. But, canned is better than no vegetables, and beans are awesome. And so that's
well, and I think too that some of the new utensils and equipment that you can have in your kitchen will do the work for you. So the Instapots, the quick cookers, the slow cookers, air fryer. But if you have all of those vegetables, I know it sounds just overwhelming, and you can buy vegetables clean if you want to take if you want to purchase them.
Butternut squash. Butternut squash. If I never have to undo my own butternut squash.
If you don't want to peel those things, and
No.
you can do.
You can
that.
even get frozen butternut squash. I got that at Aldi. Frozen butternut squash already in cubes. Man, that's like soup in a minute. That's
there
fast.
You go. Right. So there are some, there's some easier things to do in that regard, but like the quick cookers, you can, if you're going to make rice, make 3 cups of rice. Don't just make, enough for your dinner. Then you have it for the rest of the week, where you can make bowls. You can add your leftover, meat and your vegetables, roasted vegetables, whatever you have. or you can make it into a soup, or you can freeze part of the rice. I always love having rice in my freezer because I like stir-fried rice.
Yeah.
I love it. It's one of my favorite little things to have.
Freezing is a good tip because I've got teenage boys and they'll eat it. They'll decimate all of the food. And so I'm like, oh, that was my leftovers for tomorrow. So if I make 4 cups instead of 3 cups, and I can squirrel some away in the freezer, and they would have to be very ingenious to go eat the frozen rice. But I wanted to say that about teenagers too. So my kids don't have celiac, but we raised them vegetarian. And it occurred to me, at some point they're going to make decisions for themselves, and it's not the same as making decisions based on health. But I knew that they would be faced with temptations to eat what they want. And I remember having a conversation with my older son, he's 20 now, but at probably around 14 when he started, socializing, going out to eat and stuff with friends. Hey, if you had the option to eat a real chicken nugget instead of a vegetarian chicken nugget, would you? And he said, of course not. Why do you even ask me that? It was just like, he had so embraced the value of that, and perhaps I was underestimating him. And I wonder, Julie, your daughter is 15 now. Have you found that she's like, yeah, of course I'm going to stay gluten-free. I'm not going to risk my health to be, look like one of the normal kids at the pizza place, or not that she's not normal, you know what I mean?
Well, before I was a dietitian, I taught 8th grade. And one of the favorite things for teenagers to do is to rebel. And they like to test limits. So I think that, speaking in reality, they may try, they may question things, but when it's presented in a way of long-term, like understanding what is the long-term benefit of being gluten-free. One of the hard things, I think, is when a teenager or even an adult is asymptomatic. Right. So when there's nothing that happens to them, I've had people tell me before that it's almost like they wish something would happen because it would be more motivation to, pay attention to cross contact and all of that. I think with teenagers too, that's something to think about. My daughter does have symptoms, and so that is her motivation as well. I mean, she thinks about all the things that she has to do, and she has had moments where, her stomach hasn't felt well, or, different things that have happened, and she doesn't want to experience that. And so, that seems to be her motivation at this time, but it is something that is a concern. But I think with any teenager, there is, even with general like life skills, they do like to rebel in some way. But knowing that it's almost like a bounce back kind of thing, they'll come back around. But helping them understand that the long-term vision behind why is it that we need to be on a gluten-free diet, but at the same time, trying not to like scare them. Because one time my daughter accidentally took a pizza and she took a bite, and she was like, am I going to die? And I said, no, you're not going to die. So we don't want to instill the fear, but understand the why. I've noticed that over my years that teenagers tend to be more receptive when they understand why we're doing something. And you can speak to them about, or even like they're old enough to understand the science behind it, to understand biologically what is happening. Then they may be more motivated. But it is something to pay attention to, and to help them feel like it's a safe place that they are in, that yes, they're going to make mistakes or things that are going to happen. It happens to all of us.
So, and it does. I got gluten on Saturday. I've been doing this for a long time. It was horrible. And I recover, but the rest of the day is pretty awful, frankly. And so it happens, even though, and it could be that because I've been doing this for 10 years, I'm less vigilant than I was when I first got diagnosed. And we're getting some questions in the chat that make me think, when you first get diagnosed, there's so much information and a lot of misinformation online about what you can and can't have, that it becomes almost, I can't eat anything unless it's labeled gluten-free. And, I remember picking up a package of romaine lettuce that was labeled gluten-free, and I thought, this is silly. But people are like, but what about frozen vegetables? And what about beans and cans? And, because that stuff, I don't think it has gluten, and there's no reason it would have gluten in it, but it's not labeled gluten-free. What do I do? And I remember that was one of my first questions when I started working at Beyond Celiac. And I think Beckee helped me solve it. What about lentils? What about dry lentils, peas, legumes, that sort of thing? And the answer that I got then, and I think it's still true, is rinse them. If you can get them labeled gluten-free, great, but that's mostly not the case. So rinse them, and that will help. And mostly I am fine with that. But Beckee, your face says something.
Well, I would add a little something to that.
Okay, yeah.
So
talk about frozen vegetables. Talk about the stuff that you would think, should we be afraid? When should we be afraid of something that sounds like it's naturally gluten-free?
Okay. Well, first of all, on the legumes, I would say you obviously have to rinse them, but you also have to visually inspect them. So there's a chance that there are other grains that can get mixed in with those legumes. So you want to do an inspection because also you want to make sure there's not a pebble or a stone in them too.
Yeah.
It's probably got fiber in there, but I don't know. But you don't want to have that in your legume too. So I would definitely say you need to rinse those. And I did see recently there was something about some purity protocol legumes that were coming out, some like lentils. So I thought, well, that's interesting. We'll see how that works. But frozen vegetables, I would say you're pretty safe with frozen vegetables if they do not have flavorings added to them. And it's the same thing like with a potato chip, you don't want potato chips that have flavorings in them unless you've checked, if it's something that, if you say, I really want to eat blah, 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 and it's maybe I do love potato chips. I can tell you that. So it is one of those cravings that I get occasionally, but I like to have a good potato chip. But I know that I don't like potato chips that have flavorings, but there are a lot of people that do. And there are some that are going to be gluten-free. So you just need to do your, due diligence and be the detective. But I think anytime you have foods that have flavorings, additives, stabilizers, you're going to get into ultra processed foods, right? You're going to get into situations where you're going to find gluten. And, obviously grains, the legumes, condiments, salad dressings. I was shocked at salad dressings and sometimes it's in the cheese, which is crazy.
They'll make like beer blue cheese.
Yes.
That's what I found at restaurants. They'll put beer in the blue cheese. And
no, but actually in the manufactured cheese.
Yes.
It's like a fake cheese that they put into like a, salad dressing of some kind.
So there is a question. It's almost the flip of this of, can you really trust foods that are labeled gluten-free? And my answer is yes.
I say yes.
But there's an asterisk on that. I know. I don't think so though. It kind of does go back to your comment, Julie, earlier about how much are you eating. But if there is no truly gluten-free. Processed foods have to if they make that gluten-free claim, they need to be able to test it at below 20 parts per million gluten. That doesn't mean zero gluten. It means if you're eating a box of crackers, there could be a little bit of gluten in there. And so if you eat 10 boxes of crackers, you're going to feel gross. But B, you might have consumed enough gluten to make yourself not feel well.
And I think with manufacturers, remember right now, gluten-free is a voluntary label. So if they're going to label their foods gluten-free, they, as a manufacturer, know what that means and what the criteria is. And they are not going to intentionally expose gluten in any way, shape, or form, because if they get a recall, that no one wants, they don't want, that is a bad word in the
And they don't want to make the celiac
manufacturing industry. They don't want to make people sick.
No, in the celiac disease community, you don't want to make us mad.
No.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I think that's true too in the restaurant industry. I mean, I can say that you know, the intention is not to make people sick. Heck, you don't want, I mean, food safety is number one. You have to, that's high on the list of things that you have to keep in mind when you're in the restaurant industry. And you intentionally are not going to really want to make somebody sick. Now, there are some, I can say there are some pretty snarky wait staff that, you know, will roll their eyes, and some of that comes from lack of education and lack of training.
Mm-hmm.
But the intent is not there for the most part.
Right. Oh yeah. I only rarely have I seen some malicious, intentional bad behavior in that way. One follow-up comment that also typically travels here, and I think it's good to mention it, and then we'll wrap it up. When manufacturers label something gluten-free, labeled gluten-free, produce at a facility that also produces wheat.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I say that as lawyer speak. If it's labeled gluten-free, I believe it. But what is your take, both as a dietitian and a food industry professional? Beckee, you start.
Oh, well, it depends. I don't have carte blanche on that at all. I'm pretty careful about that. I will look at the product. I will think, how do they make this? What are the implications? You know, I know sometimes they'll put that on there and you say it is lawyer speak. It could be that the facility may have wheat in it and the facility is as large as a football field, but technically they have to put that on the label.
They don't though.
They don't have to, but they're choosing to.
Yeah,
let's put
right.
it that way. Okay, they're choosing to. But no, I'm pretty brand loyal, and there are certain brands that I respect and will go with. But if I'm not familiar with it, it is a stopper for me.
Okay, how about you, Julie?
I sort of give the advice to think about the larger companies, and the larger companies that have lots of different food products. They're not going to screw this up, or at least like we were saying before, not intentionally. And they know that if they do, that's going to be a problem. The smaller companies like a local bakery or, you know, like a farmer's market or something like that, where their space, even just like literal space, is smaller, I have a tendency to would not.
I get it. No, I absolutely agree. My brother is actually an industrial engineer. He works in food manufacturing, and he's described the enormity of it. He's worked for Frito-Lay. He's worked for Loprino cheese. He's worked in cream cheese, co-brand cream cheese factories. He's worked in ice cream, and he tells me that the process they go through for in such large operations is that if it's got the label, you can believe it. But you're right, though. I've also been to Theo Chocolate Factory in Seattle, and it was too little, and they didn't clean between their chocolate with pretzels and their other lines. So I see by the clock on the wall, it's 3 o'clock. I want to know that.
That went so fast.
I know.
So, and I want to give you guys, a little speed round closing parting thoughts. I just want to note, though, that this conversation has really illustrated the challenge that celiac disease poses. Our only treatment is a gluten-free diet, which can be, if I'm a professional celiac person, I do this for a living, and I got sick on Saturday. So I'll put it out there. We need better. We need a cure. We need treatments in addition to the gluten-free diet so that we can live our lives as we will, rather than feeling constrained. But this has been a super helpful conversation to maximize joy in food, even with celiac disease. So I don't know what's happening there. Beckee, do you have a 5 minute, or not 5 minute?
Well, first of all, I thought I turned my phone off, but obviously I didn't.
I was monologuing. I didn't hear your phone. It's okay.
Oh gosh. So I guess my parting thought is, I mean, it is hard. And I think, to me, try to keep it simple, but you know what? Surround yourself with people that love you and that can support you. and, that, won't dismiss, will help, will educate and grow with you when you're on your journey to a healthier diet. There are a lot of foods out there that are gluten-free that, try to eat a new gluten-free food or fruit or vegetable, try a kohlrabi, try a rutabaga, eat things that maybe you haven't exposed yourself to. And like I said, free from is a freedom. Free from, the ultra processed foods brings lots of freedom with it.
All right, Julie, your speed close.
Yeah, so I think it's important to be kind to yourself. Like Beckee had mentioned before, one of the things that my first diagnosis session that I say is to be as careful as you can, obviously, and pay attention to what is gluten-free, but not at the expense of your mental health. I think it is important to pay attention and pay attention to what you put in your mouth, but not so much to where it becomes a source of anxiety and food is no longer a positive thought for you. And I think we all go through that as people with celiac disease, is that we get kind of angry at food, and food time can be stressful or cause anxiety. But it's finding that nice balance of, yes, I have to pay attention to this, but I am not going to send myself into a tailspin over this. But it's a balance, because I have sent myself into a tailspin before. Yeah. And you kind of have to go through those two things. But know that your mental health is also important, and your relationship with food is very important. So I think finding that balance, and you find that through trial and error and as time goes on. So again, be kind to yourself, know that mistakes are going to be made. This is life, but do the best that you can do, and look for the joy in food, in the natural, in the real food that our earth provides.
Wonderful, wonderful takeaways. This Beyond Celiac webinar, town hall, we'll make it available as a podcast also. And I want to thank Julie Kennedy Nutrition. She's an RD, and can Google her. She's got a great website, Julie Kennedy RD Nutrition, Julie Kennedy Nutrition, and Beckee Moreland, certified in culinary nutrition, probably with a website coming soon.
Yes, coming soon.
No pressure, Beckee.
Yeah, right. No, I need the pressure. Thanks, Claire.
And we'll see you on our next town hall. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.